find glory. What does glory mean? Exalted honor, praise, distinction, praise by common consent, renown. English poet and philosopher John Milton once wrote, "For what is glory but the praise of fame?" Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Josh Groban, Barbra Streisand, Mick Jagger coming back to perform after a heart attack. The Rolling Stones are going on. Meryl Streep, the greatest. These are people who are before the public, who perform to great acclaim. They receive glory. They are adulated and glorified. As pop culture tells us who is the next superstar in the making that we are to glorify. Any of you watch American Idol? This young man on American Idol is Alejandro Aramas. Is that his name? He seems to be the front runner for American Idol. This time last year, he was a kid singing out on the street in front of the Claremont School of Theology. We were giving him money, but pop culture decrees, it's your time, it's your time. But we are called to remember that superstardom did not start in the 21st century. People have always paid attention to someone who was on the rise to fame. Little David, playing on his harp, went from being a shepherd boy to becoming king of Israel. Look at the three Herod kings. Look at Pilate. And everybody had to know who Caesar was. His face was on the money. Even Jesus rose to great fame. The Pharisees wanted to arrest him, but they were afraid to touch him. They said among themselves, "Look, see, you can do nothing. The world has gone after him." But as you and I know, nobody's fame lasts forever. Even at his most famous, Jesus' destiny was being played out. Jesus was aware that his time was short. So in the upper room, John's gospel reports that Jesus said, "One of you disciples will betray me." And they asked, "Who is it?" And Jesus replied, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in this dish." Jesus dipped the piece of bread in the dish and he gave it to Judas. Jesus said to him, "Do quickly what you have to do." John's gospel is the only gospel that records Judas leaving the table and leaving the room. Only John's gospel. But when Judas is gone, John does not have the disciples being sorrowful and saying long goodbyes. In John's gospel, Jesus knows his time is near. He doesn't have much time left with the disciples. So Jesus uses Judas's leaving to do what he has to do. Jesus uses Judas's leaving as the perfect opportunity to relocate his upcoming death from a sorrowful, pathetic, and embarrassing experience for the political assassination of this brave new leader in which so many people had placed hope was embarrassing. But Jesus relocated his upcoming death to a new place. From embarrassment, Jesus moved his death to ultimate fulfillment and glorification. Jesus explains, many of you thought glory would come in liberating Israel and reestablishing the old traditions. No. Jesus goes on to explain, glory for me will come not in this world, but as I am taken back into the Creator. And because I have completed my assignment to model for the world God's love and God's mercy, Creator God will be glorified, will be fully known as I am received back into God. This is the new definition of glory. To be seen and to be known, to gain renown in God. So therefore, a glorious voice is no longer simply a beautiful voice. A glorious dance is no longer simply a beautiful dance. A glorious deed, all of these things reveal the love and the mercy and the glory of God. Jesus goes on, my beautiful children, I have loved you with the love of God, And even though I must now go back to the one who created such overwhelming love, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Well, our first reaction to that statement is, pardon me, Jesus. But your commandment to love one another is really not that new. As far back as Leviticus, where men are being condemned to death for combining seed, and children are being condemned to death for disobeying their parents, holy law tells us to love one another. Perhaps the newness of Jesus' commandment to love comes in the way that we are called to understand love, the way we are called to execute love. Old Testament Leviticus laws on love, people took to mean civility. Be civil towards one another. Be decent. Treat each other with respect. Jesus' life showed that love is taking time to see everybody, to welcome everybody, to feed the hungry everybody's, to heal the sick everybody's, to give encouragement to the depressed everybody's, to bring somebody back to life, and if necessary, die so that everybody else can live. That's Jesus' new definition of love. That's radical, glorious love. Jesus said, by this kind of love, everybody will know that you are my disciples. We will stay connected. Why? Because that kind of love does not originate on earth. That kind of love comes from treasures stored up in heaven. This week, the great Doris Day passed away. She indeed was the movie star next door, wasn't she? Statuesque, she was 5'6" or 5'7", extremely humble and shy. She managed to make a lifetime of movies that people loved across culture, race, and orientation. She maintained a very close and very public, loving relationship with Rock Hudson, especially after he went from being leading man to a man desiccated by HIV/AIDS at a time when his government was pursuing no cure. The last part of her life, she spent hosting a loving wildlife sanctuary for animals. Those 2 dogs that you saw on the street, they would have been welcome at Doris Day's place. I'm sure she learned as she went along. Doris Kappelhoff from Cincinnati. Yes, another person from Ohio. And just so you know, Kappelhoff, Kappel means hat, and Hoff means head. So her name would have been Doris Hathead. Doris was born of good German stock to a housewife and a father who was a music teacher. I'm sure she never dreamed she would encounter the things that she saw in her life. Doris was born in 1922. World War I had just ended. Women had only had the vote for 2 years. By the time she was 7 years old, she would be living in the Depression. World War II, the recession, the first civil rights movement, the first women's liberation movement, Vietnam, God is dead, inner city riots, Iraq, Iran, the first time. Same-sex marriage, abortion rights, no abortion rights. She lived through so much. A third husband ran through all of her money, and she, ever resourceful, made it all back again. Her life was a life of redefining everything. And yet, I was so surprised that this wonderful woman, full of love, loving all of her life in spite of everything, wanted no memorial, no special service, no final send-off, no final summing up of her love and what it meant. Nothing said about her. Why? Those closest to Doris Day said she could not deal with death. She couldn't even be around her beloved animals as they passed away. So where did Doris see the love that she shared? Where did she see it as having its beginning and having its ending? Glory is what people of faith are working to place where they are working to place their hope. In Colossians, Paul described divine relationship like this: Christ in you, the hope of glory. We believe that true glory is the love of God fully revealed in Jesus Christ. Great! So how do we live this glory all through this life by faith on into what is next? How do we live this glory in faith when, as Mickey said, sometimes it feels like God's plan is put on hold? We live it by affirming and supporting what's good, even though we live and die, affirming and supporting that which points to love that never dies. It's the way I feel about Booker T. Washington and Mary McLeod Bethune, George Washington Carver, my ancestors, your ancestors, those who came and built places like Little Tokyo, Little China, Little wherever any of us came from. Anybody who has worked and saved and struggled and prayed so that you and I, not yet born, could have a better life than they had, the kind of life that you and I have today. They did their work and they went to glory, leaving in glory, love for you and I before you and I were ever born. I suspect the green movement expects its vision for a cleaner, healthier earth to come to reality sometime in the future, possibly way after the lives of those who have founded the green movement are over. But they believe that their glorious work will someday make a difference for those coming after them. Those generations yet to be born will know and maybe even give thanks that somebody, now gone to glory, loved them enough to save this home that we call earth, to prepare and preserve this earthly home for them. It has been said that those who can do, and those who can't teach. Boy, is that a lot of hooey. Doers teach at the same time. The great doers are the great teachers. Jesus did faith. Jesus has done all that he came to do for his disciples, for Israel, for Judah, for the Gentiles, for the world. And as Judas closed the door, Jesus opened up the way to heaven. Let all of the good that you do, all of the glory that you accrue, all of the difference that you make, let it all find its ultimate significance in the glory of heaven. Let's pray. All-knowing God, you know that context is everything, isn't it? We struggle with what to do with immigrants, abortion rights, gun laws, safety for our children, insurance. The list goes on and on and on. All unresolved racial tension, unresolved homophobia. What do we do? You have called us to do good. Not because we are good people, but because in doing good, we reflect your wishes. We reflect how you would have us live life. Help us store up our treasures in wherever you are. Lead us, guide us. In your Son's name we pray.